Good evening. Thank you for joining us. This is June 14th. It's approximately 7 p.m. and this is the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for the City of Hendersonville. We're going to begin as we typically do, and that's with a prayer and a pledge. Today we have Dr. Aaron Allison joining us, going to provide our opening prayer. He is a lead pastor at CIL Church. Dr. Allison, we appreciate you being here. We appreciate very much what your church does for our community, and ask you to lead us in prayer.
Thank you so much. Would you join me in prayer? We ask for the blessing of Almighty God upon the city of Hendersonville, its people, the aldermen, and the mayor. Help our leaders lead with wisdom and courage. Let there be a spirit of cooperation between leaders, citizens, and all stakeholders in our cities, neighborhoods, and schools. We pray you strengthen our first responders and medical professionals as they care for the sick. Heal our land of violence and disease. On this night, we do pray for the family of Bryant Millsap. Upon his passing, we pray for the comfort and peace of the Holy Spirit to be with them. Lord, may you bless the men and women of this board with health and clarity and guidance and peace and kindness and joy. May they be a blessing to the people. I ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Again, that was Dr. Aaron Allison. He's the lead pastor at CIL Church. Thank you very much for joining us. And now I ask you all to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. So I'm going to ask Annette to call the roll since we have a couple people absent, and Annette has a voice problem, so listen closely. Go ahead, Annette.
Brown. Here. Collins.
Here.
Cunningham. Here. Dixon.
Here.
Edwards. Hayes.
Here.
Peterson.
Here.
Petrelli.
Here.
Phillips. Robertson.
Here.
Skidmore.
Here.
Waters.
Here.
Claire.
Here. Is that 11? Okay. So John, help us out here. We have something coming up later on. Of course, any meeting we could have something come up that requires a 2/3 vote. What is 2/3 of, how many people do we need to vote when it comes to 2/3 when there's 11 present?
Typically, that would be 8. There are some things that require a 2/3 vote of the entire membership. In that case, it would be 9.
Do we have anything tonight that requires 2/3 vote for the entire
I'm
membership?
not sure. I'm going to look at the term limits thing
Okay.
to see if it applies to it.
When we get there, I'm going to ask you again. Thank you. I need to entertain a motion to accept our agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion from Alderman Hayes and a second from Alderman Waters. We do need to acknowledge there's 4 items that are subject to the approval of the board to be included tonight. That's item 3 under the consent agenda. Under ordinance and resolutions, that's item 6 and item 7, and then also item 8. So just want to acknowledge those. We have a motion and a second. Alderman Skidmore.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. It's very unusual for me to even do this, but I would like for at least for one meeting to pull number 9 under other agenda items. I'd rather not really go into it, but I can. But I would like to pull it for at least one meeting.
Okay, so we have a motion to defer this for one meeting. This is item 9 under other agenda items. Do we have a second?
Second.
We've got a second from Alderman Robertson, I believe that was. Okay, so any discussion on that item? So let's see. Alderman Collins.
Well, respectfully, I wish we had had an opportunity to speak beforehand, but I'm the liaison for the Arts Council, and we do not have enough members to have quorum if one person is absent from a meeting. This would change that, and it was on the agenda for consideration at our last meeting, so it's not a news flash. It's not a surprise.
Thank you, Alderman Collins. Alderman Skidmore, if you want to respond, go ahead.
Okay, I guess we're going to play ball here tonight. Well, let me just tell you my situation. This is an appointment out of Ward 1, and another alderman came in and asked for the submittal that is not a representative of my district. I don't appreciate it. I resent it, actually. And that's not the way the rules are for each and every alderman that sit on this board.
That's not true.
But not only that, I knew that it was going to be on the agenda because it was not pulled last time. It wasn't even supposed to be voted on last time. It was for information that was going to be on this next agenda. So I waited to a phone call at my house for at least 2 weeks. I waited for this person that wants to be appointed, I'm assuming to the Arts Council. I never got a phone call. And I can assure you that I would have spoken to the person that wants to represent Ward 1 for that matter. Ms. Collins and I had spoken about this position last year, or maybe around January before I went into the hospital with my heart. I can assure you of that phone call. I was undecided of whether this person should be and represent our district. And I just said that I specifically asked Ms. Collins, or I told her I was not sure that I would have to think about it. I spoke to some other people about the same position, which it's nobody's business who it was. And I don't want to get into that. But they were in Ward 1. I still had not made my mind. I was assuming that they would call me. They did not. So I was disturbed by that. The second issue that I have with it is, under the rules, as I understand them, please correct me if anybody on this board says otherwise, if you want to go into somebody's ward and pick somebody, you have to let them know officially, both parties or both aldermen, that you want to come into their ward and pick a person out. Most of the time, you don't have a problem with it. Secondly is, you got to have their signature on where they're, in this booklet right here we have tonight, the person's signature is nowhere on this board or on a page with her name on it. The only signature that's on this is, I'm assuming, because I can't read it, but I'm assuming that it's my colleague from Ward 5.
It is.
And so I object to that, because if you start doing that, then that means that I can go into everybody else's ward right now and start picking each person out of the city of Hendersonville to fill the positions that the aldermen from the 2 aldermen from that district are supposed to appoint. Sometimes we have problems. It's happened before. So that's why I'm not saying that I just want this off and gone. I want to wait one meeting. And then I'll just leave it at that.
Alderman Skidmore, thank you. Alderman Collins, I'll come back to you. Alderman Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask my colleague here on my left, in Ward 5, did you try to get anybody in your ward to run for this, to be appointed to this?
If you want to, go ahead.
Ward 5 is fully represented
So why did you go to Ward 1?
because when there is, as the liaison, or anyone, in fact, when I spoke with Mr. Bradley, and when there is a vacancy on a committee, it can be filled from any ward by any alderman.
With the approval of
Did you go to
with
Ward 1 representative and talk to them about this person?
Mr. Skidmore and I have played phone tag for a while, and I know
That's not my question.
Hold on. Let her answer it, and then we'll come back to you, Mr. Waters.
Mr. Skidmore, Alderman Skidmore and I have not spoken about this, I'm not very good at for a long while. we have played phone tag about this issue, but Ward 1 is allotted 2 representatives. The Arts Council is somewhat neutered without being able to form a quorum. And we're only meeting once in July. It's a problem.
Are you-
We have this committee. Do we want them to be able to take action?
Hold on, Alderman Waters, go ahead.
I was going to ask the old lady here, are you the chairman of the Art Council?
I'm the liaison. The chairman is Rick Murray.
Alderman Waters, anything else?
No, I have to just say I concur with my colleague in Ward 1.
Okay.
He's absolutely right, and I agree. We need to pull it. Thank you.
Alderman Waters, thank you. Alderman Collins, I still have your light, you had punched your button just a few minutes ago. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I just want to say that we've had over a year, and I've sent emails to the board and asked multiple times for people to make recommendations for this committee, and it's still half vacant, which is why they can't make a quorum, and it's hard for, nobody can be absent, and you can't vote on anything. In fact, they've had to cancel their meeting on Thursday because they won't be able to make quorum. So we've had over a year to make nominations for this. I mean, is the end of the next month really gonna change that? And I did speak with Mr. Bradley during the first Arts Council meeting, and he informed the Arts Council that when there's vacancies, the wards are no longer applicable.
Thank you, Alderman Collins. Anything else? Alderman Hayes.
Thank you, Chairman. So the nonprofit committee just, in fact, tonight, we are moving forward and asking for funding for the Arts Council. And I just want to say that as an alderman, it is oftentimes difficult to get people to step up and serve on these committees. Beautiful Hendersonville, we're still trying to build a quorum there. And I'm actively pursuing people who are in other wards. And I just want to make it clear that we really need to get things moving with the Arts Council. There's some momentum building there with the new chairman. And so I appreciate Alderman Collins moving forward. And I hope we can work through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hayes. We've got nobody else wishing to speak, so we need to go ahead and vote on this item. The motion is to defer item number 9 under other agenda items for 2 weeks. All those in favor, press your green button. Those opposed, press the red one. In favor of deferring or against deferring? Oh, I moved too quickly. There we go. In favor of the motion to defer, press the green button. Opposed, press the red one. Okay, that passes 6-4. Jason, can you show them to us? So voting against is Alderman Petrelli, Alderman Cunningham, Alderman Brown, Alderman Hayes, Alderman Collins. Voting in favor, Alderman Skidmore, Alderman Peterson, myself, Alderman Dixon, Alderman Waters, Alderman Robertson. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So that is removed from the agenda. We're back on the main motion for the agenda. Any other discussion, any other motions? For 2 weeks. Mhm. It will be, I'll place on the agenda when you get your packets for the next meeting. Any other discussion on the agenda? Doesn't seem to be any. All those in favor of approving the agenda? Oh, Jason, I think we got to start again. Approve the May 24th minutes from our meeting. I have a motion from Alderman Waters. Second. and a second from Alderman Cunningham. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes as they Let me read our guidelines here real quickly. Speakers must identify themselves by name and address. Public comment shall be limited to 5 minutes per person, in which time is not transferable to other speakers. All comments are to be directed to the presiding officer, that's me, not to the alderman, city staff, or other members of the public. Comments must address issues, not individuals or personalities. Personal attacks shall not be tolerated. Comments may support or oppose particular issues or measures, but the motives of those with different views shall not be questioned or attacked. Malicious comments will not be allowed. Speeches for or against particular candidates running for public office shall not be allowed. Stephen Puckett, Sanders Ferry Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stephen Puckett, 228 Saunders Ferry Road, Apartment A21, Hendersonville, Tennessee. I've got two things for you tonight. The first one is an item that's on your agenda, and that is the term limits resolution. There is a slight technical issue that's not going to undermine it, but it's just a little bit of a clarification. Is we do need to have language clarifying for our election commission how it is to be, the format of the question or questions is to be presented to the citizens. I think that's where that confusion last meeting came from, is just making sure that it's clear that are we going to present the question of term limits for aldermen and mayor as a separate question or as a mixed question, in which for purity of the referendum and to avoid accusations of any impropriety on this part of the board to try to fail the referendum, I would recommend that we have those questions presented separately, just so that we can ensure that the will of the citizens, especially those with mixed feelings, can be represented clearly. Also, and the other reason why we need this formatting language is to make sure that the grandfathering clause, which is I believe by statute going to be implied, we need to make sure the election commission doesn't have to sue itself to make sure that that's clear. That's very clear. Because unfortunately, we know our city politics very well to know that there may be nefarious actors that might try to create legal issues. And I don't want to make Mr. Bradley's life any more difficult or the election commission's life any more difficult than it needs to be. The second thing tonight is I know everybody's upset about inflation. And so I'm proud to announce that the Federal Trade Commission is has a full board, meaning they can actually do something, but they need our help. So if you have evidence that any companies are knowingly price gouging, reach out to them via their website, www.ftc.gov, and you can report that, as well as reporting false advertising when it comes to service, hours, product availability, service availability, things like that, so that the FTC can hold these companies accountable and help us help them, or help them help us. So thank you.
Stephen, thank you. Jim Stocks, Downing Court.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Jim Stocks, 104 Downing Court here in Hendersonville. I'm here to speak about the term limits. I'll try to keep it brief. First, I just wanted to let you all know that I approve of term limits. I think they're a practical necessity in today's times, especially for having a functional, productive government that forces our leaders, you all, to get to work. You know, you've got a limited amount of time to do what you got to do and what you want to do. And that helps force your hand to do it, so I approve of them. And I thank you all for bringing it up to put it on the ballot so that all of us, members of your constituency, we have the ability to vote for it if we like it and vote against it if we don't. But I thank you for the courage to put it on the ballot for us to make that decision. Excuse me. The one issue that I do have with the the proposed ordinance as it's written, I was trying to think of how I was going to phrase it. It's kind of what I call what's good for the goose is good for the gander provision. You've set it up the way it is right now where you get 3 terms. If you're saying that's good for the goose, anyone that comes after you, it should be good for you too. Either meaning that if you've already had 3 terms, come the next election cycle, your time's up, or at the very minimum, the current term that you're in right now should be the first of those 3, so that starts your ball. I've looked at the statute that authorizes doing this. The way that I read it, it doesn't prevent you from going back in time. It just says you pass the ordinance, that ordinance becomes effective as soon as the vote's in and they certify it at the election commission, but you don't apply it until the next election. And the reason for that is we don't want any of you sitting up there right now that already have 3 terms, and I don't know who does or who doesn't, but if you have 3 terms sitting right now, once it becomes effective after we vote on it, you don't have to step down and have someone else take your place. That's what the statute says. But come the next election cycle, if you've got 3 at that point, your time's up. So I'd ask that it be made to, at a minimum, include that first, include your current term as the first of the 3 terms. With that, thank you very much.
Jim, the battery died on the timer, so you could have gone for much longer. Thank you. The battery died on the timer, so you could have gone for much longer if you wanted to. So, thank you. Next, we have our consent agenda. We have 3 items there. Second and final reading of Ordinance 2022-10. This is an ordinance amending the Ordinance 2021-22 as amended to reflect adjustments to the city's 2022 fiscal year budget. The second item, Resolution 2022-27. This is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for a water and ice vending machine in Sanders Ferry Park. The third item, Resolution 2022-29. This is a resolution accepting the dedication of completed streets in Waterford Village, Phase 1, Lakeside Park Drive in Hendersonville, Tennessee, Sumner County. I need a motion, please. Motion to approve all 3 items on the consent agenda. Motion by Alderman Brown and a second by, I think that was Alderman Dixon. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please press the green button. Those opposed, press the red one. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we're on second and final reading of Ordinance 2022-9. This is an ordinance relative to term limits for members of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. I need a motion. We have a motion from Alderman Robertson and a second from Alderman Dixon. Alderman Robertson? Hold on here. Sorry. Just a second. Let me.
I have one amendment that I would like to make in the ordinance, and it's just to eliminate some redundancy. It's in section 1 where I say, or where it says that the mayor or by any alderman shall not exceed 3 consecutive 4-year terms. We know our terms are 4 years, so it's redundant, so I'd like to strike 4-year terms and just shall not exceed three consecutive terms. Take out the four-year.
Gotcha. Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Waters, is that you?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second on that. Does anybody wish to speak on this item? And Alderman Brown, go ahead.
No.
Oh, sorry. Alderman Robertson, this was your amendment that got us to this point. You replaced the whole text, I believe, 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of approving the amendment, please press the green button. Those opposed, press the red one. Oh, not yet. Thank you. Sorry, Jason. There we go. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Alderman Brown. Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. This has happened before. I know. But we got a problem. And there we go. We're good.
Okay. I think some of you in this room know that I have never been a big term limit guy. I've made that pretty well clear over my tenure as an alderman, that I've always felt that you were the term limit people, that if you did not want us up here, then you would vote us out. Over the past, I guess, 6 years or so, I've gradually changed my mind on that some. I have a tendency to feel maybe in the the last 2 to 4 years that term limits might be a good thing, especially for federal government and some in state government, still not necessarily so much in city government. However, 2 weeks ago, we all voted unanimously up here to do that. And since that period of time, I've had some conversation. I had conversations before that, and I've had some conversations after that, and have had some other folks bring conversations to me. And I appreciate what Mr. Stocks says tonight, because part of the couple of the conversations I had were similar to those along the lines that you were talking about. And a lot of the question was, at one time when that was being discussed, it was talked about 2 terms, not 3 terms. Matter of fact, I've had more conversation talking about 2 terms of 8 years than I have 3 terms of 12 years. So without going into other than conversations and what folks have told me, I would like to make the amendment that the 2 places that it says 3 become 2.
So we have a motion.
Nothing else would change.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Alderman Brown and a second from Alderman Hayes. What page are we going to? I think it's
25.
so 25.
25.
So we're looking at section 1.
Section 1.
Okay. Did you say it was someone else in here too?
Section 1, lower left, very lower left.
Oh, okay. So it's in two spots of section 1.
It's in 2
Okay.
spots.
So a motion is second. Anybody wish to speak on this motion to amend? Alderman Collins.
I will just say at this time that I've heard almost 100% of the people who've provided feedback to me have been really consistently saying that they just don't find a value in 3 terms. It feels like, well, why not make it 10 terms? There's not a 12 years. You know, if a child starts kindergarten in 12 years, they're graduating high school. We should be able to take care of being an alderman in that, or the mayor, in that amount of time, and that resonates with me. So I am going to definitely support this at 2 years. In fact, I'm not sure that I can support this at 3 years.
2 terms.
2 terms, I'm sorry, instead of 3 terms.
Alderman Collins, thank you. Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. And I have to agree with the maker of the amendment. I was surprised to learn that most people that I've had discussions with want 2 terms and not 3. I was surprised about that because this is my 3rd term, by the way. And I also would like to ask the city attorney, after we get done with this amendment, the language that we need to use that Mr. Stokes had brought up to be able to accomplish that as well, too. But I'm not going to make that part of the amendment. But I can definitely support the 2 terms, and I think that would be is what the people are wanting to vote on, the constituency. Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Cunningham, thank you. Alderman Robertson.
Well, why did I pick 3 terms? Why did I go for 3 terms? And it's, like I said, when I made the original motion, is I was looking, not from a personal standpoint, board, if you want to get me off this board, all you have to do is to fix Stop 30. You know, and for Ward 5, I'm sure all you need to do is build the tunnel. The problem with 2 terms, you can't accomplish the slowness of projects that go through this government. It takes multiple years for you to fulfill a campaign promise. I made campaign promises that we'd get Fire Station 7. Thanks to this board, we're going to have that. I've made promises about Stop 30. I've made promises about New Shackle Island Road and Old Drakes Creek. I've made promises about stormwater in certain of the HOAs that I represent. I have found that in one term, I was not able to turn that battleship around. It turns too slowly. 2 terms. I don't believe you're going to be able, Alderman, with all due respect, Lady Alderman Collins, you're not going to be able to get that tunnel through in 2 terms. I think there is some value in having enough time to get things accomplished in government. And it just takes too long. I wish it didn't, but it does. And so when I look at the current members on the board, I see, as Alderman Cunningham said, she served 3 terms. When I look at Alderman Steve Brown, he served 4 terms. Mr. Waters has served 3, and Mark Skidmore, I believe, has served 5. You are the senior member of this board. And so I think there is some value in longevity, but I think too much of it, kind of like the Goldilocks principle, too much is not good. And so I thought 3 terms because that gives us enough time to have a reasonable opportunity to be able to fulfill your campaign promise in your ward. And so that's why I support 3 terms. I've heard several members of this board that now are saying that they're for 2 terms, that originally they were against 2 terms because they didn't feel that was long enough to accomplish what needed to be accomplished. Of course, as Alderman Brown said, after 1 term, if we're not doing a good job, we're going to get voted out by the citizens, or 2 terms. But I just think that this is a good compromise. I think that it gives us enough time. I think we can learn the ropes. I think that we learn our constituents, and if we don't do a good job, we get booted out, real quick. So that's why I support 3 terms, and I will vote against this amendment because I think 3 terms is the sweet spot in this goal of establishing a good foundation of governance for this city. Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Robertson, thank you. Alderman Dixon.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask Alderman Brown about his amendment. You are looking at taking it from 3 terms to 2 for both mayor and alderman.
Correct.
So I would not be able to support it because I really feel like a mayor is a full-time position, and getting their feet wet, doing that particular position takes time. And I cannot support this because of that. And secondly, I fully support what Alderman Robertson just said. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Dixon. Alderman Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. We have the original sponsor of this ordinance with us tonight. Would you suspend the rules and let former Alderman Darrell Woodcock approach the podium? I have some questions for him, if that's allowed.
Do y'all have any objection to having former Alderman Darrell Woodcock allow us to suspend the rules and have him come up and speak? Alderman Woodcock. You have no obligation to answer questions.
Hello, Alderman.
How are you?
I'm doing great. When you originally proposed this ordinance, did you have a preference on, or did you have a definition of what a term is?
Yes and no. We did not formally get to that point, but I originally offered 2 terms, and many that are now suggesting 2 said that they preferred 3. So then I, at this meeting where it failed, said I was open to 3. No one spoke, and it failed. So I started at 2, negotiated to 3, and so I'm happy at 2 if this is what it takes to allow the citizens to have a chance to vote on this. But I do agree with Alderman Robeson that 3 is the sweet spot.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you bringing this to us.
Alderman
Gotta do
Peterson,
that.
thank you. Anything else? Alderman Petrelli.
Thank you, Mayor. I do appreciate what Alderman Roberson stated about, 3 years in a term to be able to try to see a project through. However, a lot of these projects are decades-long projects. For our ward, the Walton Ferry intersection, Rockland Road, I mean, we're talking decades. So these projects, if they are big, city-altering, improving projects in our town, will take years and years and years. And these projects are bigger than any one person on the board. What I would hope that could be accomplished in 2 years is that with an election, the baton could be successfully handed off to potential candidates who should be versed enough, well enough in our city issues that they are prepared to step onto this board. And if they're not, then you get what you get. But I do feel that 2 years is enough. I don't know if I can support the term limits at this point with 3 tenures. But 8 years should be enough to advocate for your ward, to make decisions on behalf of the city that you feel benefit the city through your research, your constituent feedback. I see folks in the audience all the time who they are engaged in our city. They know the issues. Folks may not all agree, but to say that, 3 is needed for a particular project, like I said, there's projects that are just decades and decades long. And I think our board collectively benefits from fresh ideas. And I really believe, to use Alderman Roberson's words, that two terms is the sweet spot. Thank you.
Alderman Petrelli, thank you. Alderman Collins.
We're talking about how we make a promise, and so to complete a project or to finish a project, and we can't do that in 12 years, which is true. These projects cannot necessarily be done in 8 years, and a lot of them it is going to require 12 years to do. For example, when my kids were real little, one's in college and one has graduated from college, they called it the Crooked intersection, Old Shackle and Sanders Ferry. There was no traffic back then. Walton Ferry, I'm sorry. Tina Lee found a news article about improving that from the year I was born. I'm 47. And so it's been a minute right there. And maybe what we need to do is stop making promises that we can't keep. And promise people that we will work hard towards their projects, that will keep them informed on the progress and the status and the obstacles, and educate people instead of spinning it to a re-election campaign. And I've had these difficult conversations with a lot of constituents over the past 3 weeks since this has come up. I would say 3 weeks worth of conversations, and there's not an argument for 3 terms that I have been able to, for 2 terms that I have been able to counter with something that was reasonable and justified 3. Thank you.
Alderman Collins, thank you. Alderman Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm on my 3rd term, and I refer back to the previous 2 speakers, Ward 1 and Ward 5. One of them said promises. You never make a promise. I don't care if that's the way you want to take it. To get elected, I promise to do this. No, you never make a promise when you're running for a position. So that's out of the question. The other colleague mentioned how long it's been on fixing the road in Ward 1. She hit right on target. Now, if it was 2 terms, that road probably wouldn't be fixed today. You got to have somebody that's got experience on this board that knows what they're doing. You got to keep on it. You got to keep, you got to stay with it. And that's what the Ward 1 representatives have done over the last 2 or 3 years. 2 years is just not enough to get things going. I tried to get paving on Western Place, my first term, my second term. I couldn't do nothing. Finally, we got it paved. Glenbrook Way is the same way. So you got to stop and think now. You got 2 terms, 8 years. It takes you the first term to get your feet wet. I mean, you come up here and you got voted in to do this, do that. I promise this, I promise that. No, I didn't promise nothing. I just said I'd go work for you. You put me here and you can take me out. And I just can't understand why anybody want to cut back 2 years, 2 terms. Right now, this town is growing. We need somebody that wants to work. Walton Ferry and Old Shackle that the lady just mentioned. I think it's 12 years old, maybe 14 now. When I first came on here, that's the first thing we're going to do. Well, that's the first thing we're going to do. Now I think it's in 24. So I'm strongly opposed to two terms and hope that my board will see the positive of serving 3 terms. And I ask for your vote on 3 terms. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Waters. Alderman Hayes.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to encourage the board to really think through this. After the citizens' comment about specifically 2 terms, that won't affect any of us up here. We would still have an opportunity for 2 more terms. So that means for anybody on this board, you're not affected by it. Last but not least, if you're really popular and you've run your 2 terms, 8 years, and you want to run again, the way it is, you could run in 2 years for the other ward position and get right back in if the people want you. So this is not out for good. Every 2 years, we elect a new alderman in each ward. At least that's the way it is right now. So you'd take a 2-year break, and then you're so popular, you'll get reelected again in 2 years. So it doesn't mean you're out forever if you really enjoy it, and you're doing a great job, and people vote for you. I really appreciate the board thinking about this. We really need to. I'm one of those people that I've gone all the way 180 degrees. This is one of 2 subjects that I have significantly, I've learned, I've been schooled. And it's the voters that have told me. And in these last few weeks, since we've been bringing this up, everyone that I talk to says 2 terms is enough. So, thank you.
Alderman Hayes, thank you. We've got nobody else in the queue wishing to speak in the amendment. And the amendment is to change the two places in Section 1 that refer to 3 terms and change that to 2 terms. So all those in favor of the amendment, which would change it to 2, please press the green button. Those opposed, please press the red. Green button would be 2, red button would be 3. So that fails 5 to 6. Alderman Petrelli voted yes. Alderman Cunningham, I can't see it anymore. So we'll get that in the minutes next time. So now we're back on the main motion. We had a question I want to ask Mr. Bradley about, actually 2 things. John, what is going to be 2/3 in this situation?
The statute doesn't spell out that it's 2/3 of the entire membership like it does in some places. So in that situation, without it being 2/3 of the membership, it'd be 2/3 of those present, which would be 8.
Okay. And John, another question that came up earlier, what will be the text on the referendum?
I'm assuming the election commission is going to put the operative words of this ordinance, section 1, 2, and 3, and 4.
Okay. Does this board need to do anything else to get this on a referendum for November?
I think we should send it to the election commission this way, and if they've got any questions about it, they can get back with us, and we'll get the language straightened out.
Do you feel like there's anything we do to prevent that?
No, I mean, because it's not been done before, and it's just going to be a judgment call for the election commission or the administrator of elections as to what language they want. I've not heard from any of them about it.
Okay. This does not, I don't believe this has in here when we want the referendum to be held. Do we need to state somewhere here that we want it to be held in November?
It would be the next, my understanding was that if this passes, it'd be at the next general election. It could be August if it was quick enough, otherwise it'd be November.
Okay. We had a conversation in the general committee that I think it was pretty well understood that we want it in November. Do we need to put some language in here to say that we would like it November?
No, I mean, if that's what the board wants, the election commission will, if it meets the timelines for November, that's when that will be, I'm sure. And would you want it in August if they could do August?
No. I think that's me. That's not the will of the board. So if you want the will of the board, we need to take a vote, don't we?
What the statute says is after the receipt of a certified copy of such ordinance, the county election commission shall hold an election on the question. And it does not say exactly which election, just be the next general election, I'm assuming. So if you don't want it in August, I would specify to be that this is to be held in November of 2022.
Okay. Would it be appropriate if I added section number 5 that we are asking the Sumner County Election Commission to hold this in November, with the general election in November 2022?
Yes.
That'd be appropriate, okay. So also move.
And that's, I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, Alderman Robertson, thank you. This is second. Let's discuss that item first. I've got a couple other people in the queue, so we will add section 5, if this amendment is approved, to ask the Sumner County Election Commission to hold this referendum in conjunction with the general election in November of 2022. Any discussion on that? All those in favor of that amendment? Jason, are we ready? Please press the green button, but not quite yet. And those opposed, press the red one, but not quite yet. There we go. We need one more. There we go. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask the city attorney about the language, if we put in the language that Mr. Stokes had recommended in the ordinance, how that would look, or what that would look like.
What was he trying to say? I'm not sure I understood what his point was.
That the ordinance would take effect, it wouldn't grandfather us in, right? It wouldn't grandfather any of the board in.
What the statute says that we're going by, that's what we're bound by. It says it will take effect after the election results are canvassed. So if the election is in November, could not apply to the people elected in November because the results would not have been canvassed yet in accordance with the terms of the state law. But it also says that it shall not affect, it shall only be prospective in application. So if you make it 3 terms, then after 2022, you can run for 3 more terms, even though you're already in 1 term now. That's what I think what the purpose of the 2-term amendment you tried earlier was.
Try.
But if you didn't get it down to 2, you wouldn't get that either, I'm pretty sure.
And so as it stands, it's going to be 3 terms, not the 2.
That's what the motion is we have right now.
Yeah, and I haven't heard from one person that wants 3 terms. Everyone that has contacted me want the 2 terms, so I can't support this with 3. I can support it with 2, but not 3. Thank you.
Alderman Cunningham, thank you. Alderman Petrelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'm kind of in the same pickle as Alderman Cunningham. I have folks who have reached out in the last 2 weeks, and they want 2 terms. So I have a question for for Attorney Bradley. Since we're putting this up to the people to vote on term limits, can we not, potentially add an amendment to this and let the people choose whether they want 2 years or 3 years when they vote for this?
You mean 2 terms or 3 terms?
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
I think that my understanding of this statute, the idea is for this board to decide what term limits it wants to adopt, and then the voters have to decide. Of course, you also understand you have to have 8 votes tonight to get this even on the ballot. So, just for what it's worth.
But in theory, if we're letting the people decide, let's let them decide. They choose whether term limits are 2 years or 3 years. I mean, can we not put that into the language?
I suppose we could put in there and let them choose one or the other or none of the above. And that's what it would amount to. It'd be an election initiative where it'd be yes, no, or I mean, Proposition A, Proposition B, or neither one of them. I mean, I don't know if the Election Commission could set it up that way, but we could certainly try.
Okay, so then I'd like to make an amendment that we truly let the people choose. If the point of this is letting our citizens choose, let's let them choose.
I need the wording on what that looks like.
Whatever legalese you need, basically, that it says establishing term limits, let's see, that are decided by the citizenry of either 2 terms or 3 terms.
I don't think that's clear enough. John, can you help us out?
You know, the only thing I know that you could do, you could pass basically have 2 different ordinances. One that says 2 years, 2 terms, the other that says 3 terms, and put them both on the ballot and see if either one of them passed. It'd be very confusing. I think we're making this far more confusing than it needs to be.
How confusing can it be?
Because we don't typically get to choose, one of 3 different things. I'm just not sure they can do it with the election machines. If you really want to do this, we need to put it off to the next meeting, and I'll meet with the Election Commission, and we'll figure if there's a way to do that.
Well, I mean, when folks are voting, I mean, sometimes, I guess voting can be confusing for some folks, but I mean, sometimes there's just, one person to vote for or a write-in. Sometimes there's 5. So I just don't see it being that confusing.
Well, let me explain. The statute says any ordinance to establish term limits for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen must be approved by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on 2 separate readings by a 2/3 vote. There has to be an ordinance adopting term limits. You're not adopting term limits if you say A or B. You decide what term you want it to be, and that's what's put on the referendum. I just don't think there's the leeway in this statutory language to have an either or. And so if you feel like that 3 is too many, then you'd oppose this. If you think 3 is just right, you'd vote for it. Because the board has to adopt a term limit ordinance before it's ever going to be on referendum by 2/3 vote.
I understand. I mean, if it's legally binding, then I understand that. But our people are smart enough to vote whether they want 2 or 3 terms. There's literally zero confusion with that. But thank you.
Alderman Petrelli, thank you. Alderman Collins.
If this fails tonight, Mr. Bradley, can it come back? Can we bring another ordinance that has 2
Yes.
terms on it?
As long as yes, under the terms of, as I read the statute, now, if it goes to referendum and fails, you can't bring it again for 4 years. But I don't know of anything that will prohibit you from, if one ordinance doesn't pass, have a second look at it with a different ordinance. So I think what you're saying is if 3 terms doesn't pass, can we come back with one with 2 term
As
limit?
another ordinance. It doesn't have to be dead.
Right.
We
I
don't negate
don't see any
our
reason why you couldn't do that.
ability to put it on. Is there a deadline with the Election Commission?
That gets you to until how many days before the election? I don't know what the deadline would be. I think we're over 4 months out now, so we'd probably be okay even in 2 weeks.
Okay.
You know, if you talk to Lori.
I would like to propose an amendment that
40
reads,
days. Okay, we got that.
under Section 1, at that time, the current
makes
term
sense.
of the mayor and all aldermen who were elected to a full term shall constitute the first of the 3 consecutive terms allowed under Section 1.
As much as I wish that we could do that, state law doesn't allow us to impose term limits until the election is certified. And the election won't be certified until after the actual referendum.
So I think what this amendment is saying is that, so like my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, is that if this goes on the ballot in November, that people who are elected in November, that doesn't count for their term. Because the
correct.
law is not in place.
That's correct. It's not operative yet.
I think it should count, I think that it should count for, well, I think the term we're currently in should count personally, but I understand that's not legally an option. But I think the people elected in November, that should count. Is there no way to accomplish that?
Now, without changing the law that the General Assembly had to pass, I mean, most cities with our form of government don't even have this option. We're one of two in the state that's tried to do this.
Alderman Collins, anything else? Hold on 1 second. We might vote to suspend the rules, but Alderman Collins, anything else? Else I'm going to Alderman Robertson.
No, I would love to suspend the rules.
Okay. Without objection, we're going to suspend the rules to hear from either Beth Wettengale or, again, from former Alderman Gerald Woodcock. You got to come up here, though. You don't have to answer any questions if you don't want to, but I think we'd like to hear your input. Go ahead.
Thank you. I hear what you're saying, Rachel, and also what you said. I think that, say if I were a candidate, I think it'd be a great platform to run on to say, even though this first term, should I be elected in November, doesn't technically count, I'm going to count it as my first term in my term limit. And so, I mean, you can impose that on yourself, or a candidate can impose that on themselves, and it doesn't have to go through any special vote or any, general legislature. So, that's just a thought. It's not in concrete, of course, but I think that is a workable solution to what this gentleman and what Rachel is talking about. So, thank you.
Alderman Collins, anything else? Alderman Woodcock, do you want to add? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to come up twice, but I've regretted not saying something for 2 years ago when this was originally debated. At that time, it was argued that many members of this council or body had spoken to so many constituents that did not want term limits, therefore they chose not to support them. Now they're saying that they have talked to so many constituents that only want 2 terms, therefore they're not going to support this because it's 3 terms. This is a vote to allow the citizens to vote on this. So if you've talked to so many people that don't want 2 terms, they will not vote for 3 terms when it's their turn to vote. I simply ask, let the citizens decide. Vote. Again, I said I was okay with 2 or 3, so I'm not advocating either one, but I'm saying right now the vote's for 3. Let the citizens of Hendersonville decide if they want 3 terms or not.
That's right.
If they don't, they'll vote no, and it'll fail, and you'll be right. If they support it, you gave that opportunity to the citizens.
That's right.
It's not your vote, it's the citizens' vote. I've regretted not saying that for 2 years, and thank you for letting me say it now.
Thank you.
Alderman Woodcock, thank you. Alderman Collins.
And so, I guess this isn't really a question for you, Darrell, but maybe for Bradley, I don't know, whoever can answer. If we did put it to 3 and it did fail, I don't think it would. I think people feel like they have to take what they can get. But if it failed, then what? We have to go back to the state to do to get permission again? You have to wait 4 years.
Yeah, you have to wait 4 years.
So nobody's going to advocate to vote against it if we put it up for 3. But we all know that isn't what people
But we also know
want.
what's about to happen. It's going to fail because you're going to say, well, I wanted 2 terms, and you're not even going to give them the chance to vote.
We're sort of
We're gonna
This
bring
is-
it back.
hold on,
we're
I'm
sort of
gonna
getting
bring it back
argumentative
up.
here.
I didn't mean to be argumentative, I'm
No,
just saying that's
no.
what's about to happen.
Darrell and I, we're friends. We're not arguing,
I got you.
promise.
So do we have any more questions for Alderman Woodcock? Okay,
No.
stick close because we might, okay? So Alderman Robertson.
I'm one of the sponsors, correct? Along with the mayor,
You are.
Edwards, Waters, and Dixon. I agree with, I'm not an attorney, of course, but I've read the statute, and I don't believe we can put and or, I don't think we can give an option on the ballot, but I would be willing to postpone this for 2 weeks to allow the city attorney to talk with the election commission to see if that option is available, and bring it back in 2 weeks. At that time, we'll have a full board, because I think everybody needs to vote on this. This doesn't need to be controlled by, by a minority, by a minority of this board. We need to hear from all the board members. So, Mayor, I would like to pull this and put it back on for 2 weeks, give city attorney time to research the option on the statute, and in 2 weeks, we'll vote, then we'll have the second reading. So,
Alderman Robertson, I appreciate that, but since you're not the only sponsor, we'll have to take a vote on that.
I understand.
And respectfully, I disagree with you, and I'm going to vote against your motion.
please, okay.
Okay, so we've got a motion to defer it for 2 weeks. Alderman Dixon, I think you second it, okay. So we've got a motion to defer this for 2 weeks to give our city attorney time to research and have some conversations. Any discussion on that?
Mayor, what
Sure.
are the discussions that we want the attorney to go to the commissioner for? Can you explain?
Go ahead, Alderman Robertson, you want to explain this?
Yeah, Alderman Petrelli suggested putting an option on the ballot. I don't think that's allowed under the statute, the way I read it. But it would give the city attorney time to discuss that option with the election commission and also to do some additional research and maybe look at some case law, if there is any case law on that. So it'll just give us better information. Lyndon Johnson said that a man's judgment is based on his information that he has. So I think it'll give us more information, better information to make a decision.
Alderman Waters, anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. City Attorney, is it possible to have two separate questions on there, on the ballot? Would you be in favor of two-term limits for mayor and alderman? Would you be in favor of a three-term limit for mayor and alderman? And you check one. And you could just check one.
I don't know any way you could do that. I think Ms. Collins is right, though. I think if you put it on there, everybody would vote for, I don't know, people are so in favor of term limits, I think they'd probably vote for whatever the greater number was.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
So I'm not sure that there's any point in doing that. We can explore the possibility of having two different propositions, but the statute that governs us says you adopt an ordinance establishing term limits and then ask the voters to approve it. So that means you're
Okay.
supposed to make that tough decision of what the term limits are going to be.
So I think we already have our answer then.
Alderman Cunningham, anything else?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So we've got a motion to defer this for 2 weeks. Any other discussion on that? All in favor, press the, go ahead, Alderman Collins.
Is there any getting it on the ballot in August?
If you want to make if you want to propose an amendment, we just voted unanimously to put it in November.
I'm going to wait. I'll wait.
All those in favor of the motion to defer, please press the green button. Those opposed, press the red one. So that passes 7-4. Voting in favor of deferring is Alderman Petrelli, Alderman Skidmore, Alderman Peterson, and those went away already. So, Jason, 7-4, was that correct? Okay. So we have disposed of that. We will see that again in 2 weeks, and we will move on to item 5. And this is first reading of ordinance 2022-11. This is an ordinance of the city of Hendersonville, Tennessee, to adopt an annual budget and a tax rate for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022, and ending June 30th, 2023. Need a motion, please? We have a motion from Alderman Cunningham and a second from Alderman Waters. Alderman Hayes.
I need to find that amendment. Hold on one moment. The amounts, I guess, the nonprofit committee would like to submit an amendment for $13,500 in contributions to the Hendersonville Arts Council and also $670 in contributions to the Sumner Spay and Neuter.
Okay. So help me out. Jesse, may I have a second for Alderman Cunningham. Do you know what page that's going to be on, Alderman Hayes? You didn't know I was coming to you with that question, did you?
No, I didn't.
It's not. 39. Thank you, Annette.
Thank you, Annette.
Thank you. So y'all see where those changes would go? Any discussion on that? Alderman Cunningham, any discussion on that proposed amendment? Okay. Alderman Peterson, any discussion on that proposed amendment? Okay, we'll come back. Any other explanation needed for that amendment? All those in favor, please press the green button. Those opposed, press the red one. We need one more? Oh. We voted on it at this point. We can have it reread. Would you like to reread it?
I will.
Okay, we will hold the vote open. Go ahead, Alderman Hayes.
Yes, sir. This is a budget amendment, general fund, community contributions. A, add $13,500 in contributions, Hendersonville Arts Council. And then B, add $670 in contributions to Sumner Spray and Neuter.
So that passes unanimously. We're finished with that amendment. I have an amendment. I need you to, actually, there's two parts of this. One will not affect the bottom line. In the stormwater fund, I'm asking to increase line 824 in professional services from $200,000 to $400,000. And I'm also asking to increase line 700 in drainage control from 1.27 million to 2.4 million. This adds 1.3 million. This is just in our drainage, in our drainage budget. At the end of the year, what that means is that we will have less money sitting there. It does not affect our general fund budget. It just affects that drainage budget. That's one part. The second part is, and this has to do with the general fund, we need to increase the Drakes Creek soccer concession upgrades from $40,000 to $43,435. We are just adding $3,435. We feel confident that that will cover our half of it. We've got some information just last week that we feel like the whole cost will go to $86,000, and so we had agreed to cover half of that, and that gets us, $83,000, and we will cover $43,000. So I have two parts to my proposed amendment. One deals with the general fund, increases spending by $3,435, and the other deals with the stormwater fund, which does not change the bottom line of the general fund. And a second from Alderman Cunningham. Any discussion on that? Alderman Robertson, do you want to discuss that?
I just want to know what is estimated in the stormwater to be the fund balance after this amendment.
Is that a Sarah question or a Jesse question? Or a Robert question?
I mean, I think I've subtracted, but I just want it for the record, that there'll be sufficient money there.
Alderman Robertson, can you ask that again?
Yes, with this amendment that I fully support to increase the stormwater budget so we can do more projects, what will that leave us at the end of the year?
Over $1 million.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay. Any other questions, any other discussion on the proposed amendment? Alderman Cunningham.
I just wanted to make a comment on that, and thank you, Mayor, for increasing that fund and increasing the operation of it. We are under absolutely no obligation to maintain a large or small balance in that fund. So whatever we can use to facilitate the drainage issues across the city is very well received, and I totally support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Cunningham. Alderman Hayes, I have your light on. Do you want to speak on this amendment?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Alderman Peterson on this amendment? No, sir. You're hanging over or holding over from before. Any other discussion on this? I don't see any. All those in favor of that amendment, please press your green button. Those opposed, press the red one. That passes unanimously. Now we're back on the main motion. We've amended it twice. Alderman, holy cow. Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a few comments. First, I wanted to thank our Finance Director, Robert Manning, our Chief Executive Officer, Jesse Eckenroth, our Mayor, and all the department heads that have worked tirelessly on this budget. It's a excellent budget. We're not going to have any tax increase. We're going to be able to give our employees a 6% raise this year to try to combat some of the inflation. We have a balanced budget. We have a very healthy general fund, and we're able to have our general fund at what the over what the State Comptroller's Office has recommended, which is a 16.7%. And that's kind of our rainy day fund. And we're going to spend over $3 million in paving this year. And also, I know that $3 million this year doesn't get us as far as $3 million did last year because of the inflation that we're trying to combat. But, and I'm not sure how much on the storm water now that we're going to be able to spend, thanks to the mayor's amendment. But it's going to be a sizable amount this year, too. So I encourage the board to vote in favor of this budget, and I'm just very thankful to everyone that was involved in putting it together. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Cunningham. Alderman Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to echo Chairman Cunningham and thank all the department heads for working on this budget and putting it together. And even though I would add a 6% raise is not going to combat inflation, but buckle up, it's going to be bumpy. Anyway, Mayor, I do have a question. I've gone over the budget, but I do have a question about the tax rate. I know Chairman Cunningham said there's no tax increase. What exactly is the tax rate, and is that the same from last year?
It is it 9.187, 9.182?
Page 33,
Page 33?
section 7.
There you go.
Excellent.
Okay, and that's the same as the current fiscal year, yes.
Correct.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that it was the same, and then I really want to commend the city and this board for not raising taxes. That was my campaign promise. And so was term limits. So I've knocked out 2. But we still have a lot of work to do.
In your first term.
In my first, yes. Can we change term limits to 1? Just kidding. Okay, Mayor, thank you so much.
Alderman Peterson, thank you. Alderman Robertson.
Yes, and I also want to say thank you, Mayor. This was a collaboration budget that the mayor and the staff listened to us in workshops, and so I want to brag on the mayor and also the staff. For sure, this budget represents a great amount of efficiency. I was told by Mr. Eckenroth that the first budget that came from the department heads narrowed down to what we actually saw, I think was cut $4 million or approximately $4 million. So that's cuts that we didn't have to make. I told Mr. Eckenroth that I think a better title for him instead of Chief Operating Officer is Chief Efficiency Officer. And so I want to encourage, I agree with Alderman Peterson, the storm clouds appear to me to be gathering. All the indications are we may be heading toward a recession. So I hope that the staff really puts on their efficiency hats and search every possible way to save money this next year, which brings me to a suggestion that I have for the mayor and the staff. Many organizations in the private sector have programs where employees can offer suggestions to save money to the organization. And if they offer those suggestions and they actually come through with savings, they get to share in those savings. I would like to suggest to Mr. Eckenroth and the mayor that the staff work on an efficiency employee suggestion reward program so that employees would be able, they know how this engine works better than we do up here, but where they would be able to offer suggestions in whatever way the staff thinks is appropriate and to reward those employees when they make those kinds of suggestions. It may sound hokey, but folks, we've got to prove, I believe, to the citizens that we're looking at every possible way to squeeze efficiency out of this government. So with that suggestion, I hope that, Mayor, that you will work with the staff and bring back to us such a reward program that we can hopefully even search out and seek greater efficiencies in the year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Robertson. I completely agree. That's something we need to look at and something we need to come up with. I want to agree with several comments that have been made about storm clouds and about what's ahead. If the fiscal year began August 1st, this budget would be drastically different. When I proposed a 6% pay increase for our staff, it was meant because I felt like it was fair and it was necessary. We need to hold on to our staff. At the time, I thought that some people would consider that a little bit exorbitant. Right now, it seems like it's sort of middle of the road. I worry about what the next I worry about a year from now what we're going to be up here having to decide and what our lives are going to be like. To give you an idea of what we've had to deal with in this budget, we've seen the cost of Sanders Ferry Greenway increase 147%. Our contribution to TCRS increased 26%. The fire hall increased 92%. Our health insurance increased 9.76%. Our gas for our police vehicles increased 40%. Our landfill cost is going to increase in the neighborhood of 13%, if not more. We've been able to do what we've done in the next fiscal year and in the current fiscal year, partially due with $8 million in, for the most part, no strings attached grants. That's 5.9 from the federal government and ARPA funds, and that is $1.3 million from the state, followed by $650,000 from the state. That's approximately $8 million that was given to us with very, very few strings. We're not getting it next year. We're not getting it the year after that. I worry very much where we're going to be a year from now as we try to make some of these decisions. We have a lot of projects that are not part of this budget with the anticipation that they will be part of the next budget or the next budget or the next budget. We're going to have to make some difficult choices. Looking at what the inflation rate is right now, we're going to have to provide, if we want to keep our employees, we're going to have to provide probably a greater than a 6% increase a year from now. This 6% increase in the neighborhood, help me out, Robert, $1.5 million? So the 6% increase costs the city what? $1.2 million. So thank you. I appreciate that help. But the reason that I feel like we have to do that, and it's necessary and it's fair, is because of the staff that we had. All the praise that y'all have given me and Jesse really needs to go to the department heads and the people below them. They're the ones that put this together, and not only do I look forward to coming up with a program where they can mention some efficiencies, but I also look forward to, right now, mentioning some of the efficiencies they provided and some of the ideas they provided in this budget right here. They've been doing it for a long time. They understand how we spend money. They understand how best to spend money, as well as how to generate money. So very much what they've done, what is reflected in this, what this budget is really a reflection of their work. I'm finished. Any other comments? All those in favor of first reading of ordinance 2022-11, please press your green button. Those opposed, please press your red one. That passes unanimously. That's first reading. Let's move on to item number 6. We have first reading of ordinance 2022-13. This is an ordinance adopting revisions to the zoning ordinance for the city of Hendersonville. And Alderman Peterson.
So
We
moved.
have a motion from Alderman Peterson. And a second from Alderman Dixon. Alderman Peterson, do you want to speak on this? I've got Alderman Robertson wants to also.
No, if you look at the packet, this is all because of zoning ordinances. And we discussed this at the last planning meeting last week. And I would like Director Freed to approach the podium to update us on all these changes and to answer any questions the board may have.
I believe Director Free is going to suggest an amendment for us also. Does that make sense to go to him right now or go to Alderman Robertson? Alderman Robertson, I'm sort of looking, okay. So Alderman Peterson, go ahead with any questions and we'll turn it over to Mr. Free.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Hello, Director Free. We had a lot of changes that you presented, you and your staff, and we appreciate all the hard work that you've put into these ordinances. And if you would just kind of update or, let the board know what those changes were.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. I'll be happy to do that. I do want to commend the Planning Commission for their hard work on this, the work session, and.
Hold on one second.
Yes.
Come here. 2022-11. Jesse, can you come here and help us out, please? And Robert also.
Both of them stepped out.
Okay.
I'll go get them.
Yeah, could you?
We had a vote on the budget, and then I passed ordinance 2022-11.
Annual budget and tax rate.
We just did. That's what we voted on. There was a bunch of amendments, several amendments on that.
So it's not a separate budget for the tax rate?
No, it's not.
We've
It's
never
within
done that
it.
before, but that's okay.
It's within it. It's on page 33.
Yeah,
Hold on.
we've always done it separate, because the law says you can't pass the tax rate until you pass the budget. That's why we always vote the budget first.
Make a motion to adjourn for a few minutes. Take a break. So, hold on one second. Alderman Cunningham.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn for 5 or 10 minutes
Need a second?
temporarily,
Alderman
just
Petrelli.
temporarily.
All those in favor, please press the green button. Those opposed, press the red one. Take a break for 10 minutes. I said that too quickly and gave Jason no opportunity to be prepared for that. Okay, that passed unanimously. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Okay, there we go. Welcome back. We are at first reading of ordinance 2022-13. We're going to hear from Keith Free, our planning director. Keith, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Clary. And I'll be brief, but I do want to commend the Planning Commission and on their hard work on all of the thoroughness that they've looked at the documents that are the changes that are before you tonight. Also, I want to thank the planning staff. We have a very high-level professional planning staff, and a lot of these kind of changes and things that are done, a lot of times you may, work that out to where you have consultants doing it, but we have staff that has the ability to address these things at a very high level, and so I appreciate all their hard work over the last year and a half for these changes. These changes, about 2.5 years ago, we adopted significant changes and a whole redo of our zoning ordinance. These probably 95% of the changes before you this evening are mostly somewhat small, insignificant changes, but do make a difference in the administration of the zoning ordinance. There are some 5% of the changes that are a little bit more significant, and overall, it's a lot of technical changes. There are some things that impact density. There's some things specifically about expanding the opportunity with conditional uses of brewery and tap room, and some things addressing the location of pools and fencing and things like that. And so I'm not going to go through everything as we did at the Planning Commission, so that took a while, but it was very thorough. But I'll just open it up to any questions anyone would have. There is one error that I have found that we do need to address. There's an issue on vacation rental. So vacation rental is currently only allowed within general commercial and Old Town commercial. And the way that we had it worded was actually limiting vacation rental to only the second story of multi-story buildings. Actually, it needs to read where if it is a multi-story building, it needs to be on the second floor. So it's not omitting the ability to, if you had a house that you were using for vacation rental within only those two zones, or a single-story building, that you could operate a vacation rental. But those are the only two areas that you can actually operate vacation rental. And one reason that I feel like we need to make this correction is because currently the state has statutes relating to vacation rental, but through those statutes that were passed, the city of Hendersonville were grandfathered in. So we don't want to alter our ordinance to a significant level that would bring us out of compliance with that grandfathered status. So that is the one issue that we need to address for sure.
Keith, should we make that change tonight, or do you want to send something out over the next 2 weeks? What do you feel more comfortable with?
I could just fix it over the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
And have that in there in a corrected set. And then anything else that we might come up with this evening, we can also include that. And so when you get this for the second reading and the public hearing, then we'll have corrected versions of whatever wording that we need to do.
Okay. Alderman Peterson, anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. Stay close, please, Keith. Alderman Robertson.
Hi, Keith. Hi, how are you, Alderman? Good. We met yesterday for over an hour and talked about these. I guess with me being formerly on the Planning Commission as a member, not as a liaison, but as a member, I know how important zoning regulations are. So I've gone over these quite extensively because I want to make sure that I understand them and that in my opinion, they're in the public interest. So I've got 3 questions, basically. You told me yesterday when I asked you that 95% of the changes are just technical, or what did you refer to them as? They'd be kind of low or minor level changes. They were mainly cleanup of the language, that they weren't substantial. That's correct. So I wanted to put that for the record. The 3 questions that I want to ask about, first of all, this on vacation rentals. Yes, sir. Mr. Bradley, I know that we've had a lawsuit that we were successful
on vacation rentals. So what we're trying to do here does not jeopardize the city in any way regard that lawsuit or in any future lawsuits, does it?
Not in my opinion, it doesn't.
Thank you. And the vacation rentals are limited, you said, to only 2 zoning, right? 2,
That's correct. They are only in Old Town Commercial and General Commercial. And just to make it very clear for anybody that is listening, from that lawsuit, there was a misunderstanding, I believe, that the city did not prevail in that, but the city did prevail. So how we have been enforcing vacation rental outside of Old Town Commercial and General Commercial in just typical residential areas is the same now as it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So nothing has changed on our enforcement. We're still actively enforcing it.
but someone living in a subdivision would not be able to have a vacation rental because it's not in one of those 2 zones. Is that correct?
That's true. And vacation rental is when you rent out the entirety of your house.
Yes. Okay. I wanted to make that clear. The second item is, we talked about swimming pools.
Yes.
And I think that is on, it says page 72, section 10-4-23A. And I just want you to make sure, so if I build a swimming pool at my home, and I can't afford one, but if I did, the apron, the concrete, the pump, and everything has to be at least 5 feet from the property line. Is that true?
That's correct. With the changes that we're proposing, that's correct.
Okay, and we talked about, some of those changes were a little ambiguous to me, and I hope the staff will look at that and maybe,
Yes.
to me, layman reading, it was a little confusing, so, but I wanted you to say for the record what you just said.
And we can, I understand what you're talking about there. We can correct that language. It'll still be the same as far as the end result of what it creates, but we'll alter that language just a little bit to make it a little bit clearer.
Thank you. The third of my 4 points, as a minister would say, getting there, aged homes. This is let's see. This is section 10-3-1. 10.3.1.5. Easy for you to say.
Yeah.
It's on page 137. And on this, right now, if you wanted to build an aged home, it requires 3 acres.
Yes, sir.
5 units per 3 acres. And what the staff is recommending is dropping that requirement from 3 acres to 1 acre. Correct?
That's correct.
Would the staff have any objection just as a compromise instead of 1 acre to 2 acres?
No. And that would be,
Would that be reasonable?
were the 3, as we discussed.
Yes.
Where we established the 3, when we did this 2.5 years ago, we did not have a defined definition of home for the aged, but we had a lot of people asserting wanting to do it, because it is something that you can do through the state. It's a program, and so we defined it then. And when we did that, we just went ahead and did it like we do assisted living or independent living, and made it 3 acres minimum. It is allowed 5 units an acre, but it's on 3 acres, so you could have 15 units on 3 acres. And then what we were proposing was to move that down to 1 acre, but I am open to having that at 2. 3 just seemed a little excessive, but 2 certainly is better than what we have it now. So I would be open to that.
Okay, and I'll make an amendment after my comments to accomplish
Do you want to
that.
make an amendment for us to consider tonight, or do you want to wait 2 weeks? Up to you either way.
I'd like to do it tonight
Okay.
so that we can get comments if there are people that.
Okay.
The last thing, with an election coming up, would you go over the changes in the signage for elections that this rule is recommending?
Yes. The state law, as you may or may not be aware, has changed with when you can put up election signs. Currently in our ordinance, it has it where you can do it a certain number of days prior to the actual voting, the day that you actually vote at the voting booth. They've changed that where now it's a certain number of days prior to early voting. So basically, you're going to see more election signs out. And one thing just to mention is that the state law, which we have been abiding by the state law is in conflict with the actual Supreme Court ruling in regards to signage. But we're kind of caught in a difficult spot where that we need to pick one to do. And probably the best for us to do is to go along with the state law, since that is it's a state statute.
Thank you. I just thought that was good. Okay, so I'm through with my comments, so I'm ready for my amendment, Mayor, if it's appropriate.
Sure, is this going to page 137?
Yes, 137,
Okay.
section 10.3.1.5. And this is to decrease the home for aged acreage requirements from 3 acres. My amendment would be to 2 acres. I'm afraid.
Alderman Robertson, I'm sorry, I looked at the page numbers on the bottom. It needs to be the page numbers.
Yeah, it is.
It's
Help us,
confusing.
Keith.
Yes, we can do that on, which page number do you want to go
So-
by?
So it's page 137 of the ordinance, but 313 on the actual packet, is that correct?
That sounds like that's
Okay.
probably right.
Alderman Robertson, tell us where we need to go. 10.3.1,
Yeah, 10.3.1.5.
okay?
Point 4,
I'm sorry.
yeah. 10.3.1.4.
On page 313 of your packet, which is 137 of the ordinance. And we're going to change that 3 to, what are we going to change it to?
Change the 1 acre to 2 acres.
1 acres to 2 acres.
Would do what Alderman Robertson's
Yeah,
wanting.
but this, I'm sorry. I guess we need to make sure we get this right.
Yes.
The section that I have, Keith, is 10.3.1.5. 1.4 is scrap operation guidelines.
Yes.
Now, this is the executive summary that you provided. That's the,
Yes,
that's the
yes.
site I'm using.
Yes. Yeah, I see
So-
what you're saying. Yeah, the 5, it actually is 10.3.1.4.
Well,
For
in the-
the actual change you're making. yeah,
I'm just going
yeah.
by what's
It is,
in the
yeah.
executive summary.
It's listed incorrectly there on
Okay.
the 5.
So
all right.
which page do we need to go to?
Keith?
Yes. Let me pull that up in here.
Okay, 313. And then on 313, do we need to go to item 4 or item 5?
4.
4, okay. And at the very end of that sentence in red,
Yes.
1 acre needs to be 2 acres.
1 acre needs
Yes.
to be 2 acres.
Yep.
Alderman
Yes.
Robertson, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Keith, do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that.
We've got a motion, I need a second. Second. A second from Alderman Cunningham. Any other discussion on this?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Go ahead, Alderman Skidmore.
Now, what is this trying to do again? I'm sorry, because I kind of got lost.
Let's
And
go
I was
to-
trying to rebound, looking for the page, and I think I've obviously found it.
I'll ask the person who made the motion, Alderman Robertson.
Me too. Let me explain it.
Yeah.
Or Keith.
About the swimming pool is the thing.
Oh, are you asking about, well, I didn't make that amendment. They agreed to make that change. Just, the change I've got is for an aged home.
I got you.
It has to, be right now, it's 3 acres. They're wanting to go to 1.
Ah.
And I'm in the middle. I want to go to 2. So
Okay.
if anybody wants to put an aged home up, they have to have at least 2 acres of land if this amendment passes.
Got you. Okay, got you. No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on that?
It has to be changed here to begin with.
So does it need to be changed anywhere else?
Yeah. Maybe just that and any other place that's
Yeah.
listed. I think it's probably in the definition, but we can change that. But we'll take care of that.
I don't feel real comfortable with that, to be honest with you. Alderman Robertson, could we bring this back in 2 weeks?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
I appreciate
I'll defer.
Okay.
I'll
Yeah.
withdraw.
that. Okay, so we've got to withdraw. Alderman Cunningham, do you withdraw? Say, okay.
we'll make those corrections.
Okay. Okay, Alderman Robertson, anything else?
No, sir, that's all.
Appreciate your comments, thank you. All those in favor of, hold on here. First reading of 2022-13, please press the green button. Those opposed, press the red one. Not yet, not yet, not yet. There we go. That passes unanimously. Now we're on ordinance, first reading of ordinance 2022-15. This is an ordinance amending ordinance 2021-22 as amended to reflect an adjustment to the city's 2022 fiscal year budget. Alderman Skidmore.
Move to approve.
We have a motion for Alderman Skidmore. And a second from Alderman Cunningham. Any discussion? All those in favor of ordinance, first reading ordinance 2022-15, please press your green button. Those opposed, please press, some of you already voted. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we have resolution 2022-28. This is a resolution adopting policy guidelines for the use of contingency funds for capital projects. Alderman Cunningham makes a motion. We have a second from Alderman Peterson. Any discussion? Alderman Robertson.
I'm so sorry. Yes, I have an amendment for this.
Okay.
If you look at the page 2 of the resolution, where the table use of contingency funds for city projects, I support this 100% in helping to move projects along quicker, but there is a certain amount that I feel that there needs to be better transparency and better accountability of the board. So what I would amend this, under the per project cumulative, the per project cumulative on that chart now says 5% or $25,000, whichever is greater. Now, if you look at one of the projects that we presently have, the Fire Station 7, 5% of that project would be approximately $250,000. So I think that there needs to be better transparency. I think we need to have a number that if a project goes over a certain amount, it triggers more accountability and more transparency. So I would propose under the per project cumulative to scrap the 5% or $25,000, whichever is greater, and put $100,000.
Okay.
And with the $100,000, that any project, once it goes over $100,000, would have to receive approval of the Capital Projects Committee, which is the chairman of all of the committees of this board. So if a project comes in over $100,000, the overruns, then that would trigger more scrutiny, more accountability, and more transparency to the whole board.
So, Alderman Robertson, so let me catch up. Page 590, on that chart, the per project cumulative, we're going to cross out all the verbiage there,
Yes?
and we're going to place $100,000.
Yes.
Okay?
And I have discussed this with Mr. Eckenroth, and I don't know if you want to say anything about it or not, but I just feel like once it gets to a certain amount,
No, they can't make a final decision.
there needs to
It's just a
be
recommendation.
more
Good point.
scrutiny by the board.
So, what,
Yes.
so, okay, so we have a motion and a second. We can't allow the Capital Projects Committee to have final say on something, but we could seek a recommendation from the Capital Projects
Okay.
Committee. Okay, so does that fit with your amendment?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna scrap the verbiage that's in there, make that $100,000, and add, and requires we should say, expects a recommendation from the Capital Projects
Yes.
Committee.
And I would have no objection of making that a resolution if that's possible, which would just require one reading.
Can we do that?
Yep, this is done by resolution.
Okay, this is done by resolutions, that works.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so Jesse, do you wanna help us out?
Yeah, sure. So Mr. Robertson and I talked, and the whole idea of this was to give some sort of framework. I am not set on the details of the framework, but it was to do two things, right? Provide some accountability and some efficiency. $100,000 is enough buffer, especially since if we were to come back to ask for more, since funds have already been appropriated in a contingency fund, we could do it by resolution. So I think what may be simpler is the last two, is just to join them together and make it one and put per project cumulative 100,000, and we can keep the contingency funds are available, requires a BOMA resolution, and then we just make it 4 tables. It still gives staff enough buffer. Right now, we have 0, so this gives us something. If something's $100,000 that's going to come as a change order, it gives us enough time to come with a resolution to BOMA.
So you're suggesting we change it?
Yes, I'm in agreement
Okay.
with the wording that Mr. Eckenroth suggested.
Okay, so tell us what that wording was again.
So we'll take the last 2 tables,
Okay.
the last 2 rows on the table.
Mhm.
We'll make them 1. It will be $100,000 for the threshold.
Okay.
And then where the cells are merged and it's under requires mayor approval and requires notification, and it says if contingency funds are available, requires a BOMA resolution,
Okay.
that will stay.
Okay.
So that will stay, and then the limit will be $100,000.
Okay.
You leave the language in there too about if contingency funds are not available requires a BOMA ordinance. That would still be applying there, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. So you could look at it another way. You could scrap the per
Whole
project
line.
cumulative 5% or 25, just take that out and take the 10% and make it 100,000.
Yeah,
That's
the
a simpler
simplest
way
way.
to look at it.
So what we're saying, and help me out, Alderman Robertson, is the row that says per project cumulative, we're gonna cross that out entirely. The next row that says per project cumulative, we're going to take out the 10% and put in $100,000.
Correct.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson, are you good with that?
Yes, sir.
Alderman Petrelli, are you good with that? Yes. Okay. We've got Alderman Cunningham. Alderman Robertson, anything else right now?
No, sir.
Okay, Alderman Cunningham.
I think you answered my question. So we're just going to take that line out completely and put 100,000 instead of the 10%, right?
Exactly.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Petrelli. Oh, okay. Okay. So we've got a motion and a second. Alderman Robertson, anything else on your motion?
No, sir, I'm done.
Okay. All those in favor of, any other explanation needed for this motion? All those in favor of the motion, please press the green button. Those opposed, press the red one. That passes unanimously. Now we're back on the main motion to approve what we have in front of us. And that is ordinance 2022-15. We're at the very bottom of, I'm sorry. We're on resolution 2022-28. This is on page 2 of your agenda. Item 8. Probably. So we've amended, and we have no more discussion on the main motion. All those in favor of resolution 2022-28 as amended, please press your green button. Those opposed, press your red one. Missing one. Missing one. Oh, there we go. That passes unanimously. Now, thank you. Now we're on to other agenda items. Now we're on to reports. Brief committee reports. Chairman Brown, General Committee.
Be as brief as it can. It was a big one. We looked at ordinance 2022-12, an ordinance rezoning 4.47 acres located at 126 New Shackle Island Road on the east side of New Shackle Island Road and on the north side of Innovation Way, and approving the Grace Place at New Shackle Island Comprehensive Development Plan to govern the development of said property. That was passed unanimously. We added to our agenda ordinance 2022, and the number will need to be assigned to that tomorrow. An ordinance reducing the number of aldermen from 12 to 6 over the next 2 years, affecting the election cycle after this one. We also looked at ordinance 2022-13, an ordinance adopting revisions to the zoning ordinance for the city of Hendersonville. You know, passed that just a few minutes ago on first reading. Ordinance 2022-14, an ordinance amending city beer regulations to allow the sale of beer at golf entertainment centers, was tabled. We will call a special call meeting on June the 28th at 6:30 to give an opportunity for Mr. Edwards to be here, who is liaison to that committee ago. Resolution 2022-18, a resolution to approve a final development plan for Nearwater Place, was passed unanimously. Resolution 2022-30, a resolution formally naming property known as the Beatty Farm to Heritage Park, was passed unanimously. Resolution 2022-31, a resolution establishing a public information officer position and amending the job classification list and pay table, was passed unanimously. Resolution 2022-32, a resolution repealing Resolution 2017-43 with respect to funds reserved for land acquisition, was passed and moved to the board unanimously. All these will be before you except the ones that we passed tonight in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Chairman Brown, thank you. Chairman Petrelli, Public Safety.
I don't have a report. Is the CEO, are you going to be addressing some public safety issues in your report or no? No? Okay, no report.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Peterson, Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. I emailed the meeting highlights to all of BOMA, so you should have all received that. And I would ask Director Free to return if anyone has any questions about the planning ordinance, the ordinances that were approved. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Free? Alderman Cunningham.
I just was interested in the rezoning for Grace Place, if that was passed, how that, I know that was passed. Was that unanimous by the Planning Commission?
Yes, I believe it was, as well as the future land use plan was amended as well at the Planning Commission
Okay.
for that.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Alderman Cunningham, thank you. Keith, thank you. Alderman Peterson, thank you. Jesse, Chief of Operations.
Thank you. I don't have a very lengthy report tonight, but wanted to congratulate Chief Bush. He just finished up one of his classes for Executive Fire Officer. I think there's only 56 in the state of Tennessee. That's through the National Fire Academy, so that's going to be, I think, a 2-year process. So he will probably come out top of his class, I'm sure. So,
Pretty cool.
good job, Chief. The fire department is going to start their accreditation process soon, too, so we're excited about that. Our police department has it now. Our fire department's going to have it as well, too. So, we have launched our IT manager position, so if you guys know anyone interested, and since PIO was approved through general, we're going to go ahead and post that position. So that should be out soon. So if you know anyone who's looking for public information officer position, let them know. That should be on the website pretty soon. Our new HR manager, Amanda Greider, started, I believe 2, maybe 3 weeks ago, doing a great job. So she's a welcome addition to the team. And then our economic development and community planner, we've launched that and we've accepted an applicant. He has his master's and he's an adjunct professor, very well versed in data, statistics, community planning, grants, has a background in GIS, so he'll be great for writing grants. We're very excited to have him. He's from California, so he should be a strong candidate, I'm sure. We won't hold it against him, though, right? Okay. And then last but not least, planning is wrapping up it's a redevelopment and future land use on a West Main Street in Old Town. So I've seen the draft. It looks very good. We're excited about pushing that out. It should be a couple weeks, and BOMA will get their hands on that. So it's a great plan for future economic development on West Main and Old Town. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. You have my report in your packet. I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn. A motion to adjourn from Alderman Waters is second from Alderman Peterson. All in favor, please press your green button. Those opposed, press the red one.
Peg.
Are we doing something wrong?
Waiting on Peg,
Oh, we need.
Jim, and Eddie.
Okay. Hold on one second. So do we need to do it again, Jason? I didn't see sorry.
It's still open.
Still open. So if you haven't voted, please vote. Alderman Robertson, I need you to vote. He wants to stay. That passed unanimously. We're adjourned.